for this date, January 31st, 2019. I'd like to have call the meeting to order and also have an acceptance of the agenda. Motion by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Good evening, folks. We're having a meeting basically to go over, as the notice mentions, a proposed construction of the new senior center and gymnasium event, as well as to discuss the proposed high school track and athletic field restoration project. The reason why we're having that discussion tonight is because we've had proposals and the architects as well as the designers coming before us on both projects, and we just did not have enough time to really go through all the discussion because we're in the midst of our budget. And of course we have all the department heads coming and talking about budget. And frankly, when you start meeting at 6 in the evening and you end it at 11, 11:30 or later, it's not good business to do it. The board members had indicated that there were some concerns, numbers, because they all value these projects and we want to see them get to a vote and get to town meeting and let the people decide whether they want to go forward with them or not. And so tonight's meeting is really about discussing the projects, some of the pros and the cons maybe that the various board members have about it, as well as talking about the figures, and to see how this can be put together, hopefully within the next 2 months, and if not, then we can discuss what other options might be available. But that is the reason for this meeting. That is the reason why we called it, and unfortunately why we would have loved to have called it for another day of the week. Everybody's schedules were such that when we discussed it last Tuesday, this was the only date that fit everybody's schedule. I understand some people might think that we're trying to compete with some of our other competing boards, but when you realize that there are all these other boards that are meeting every night and we are liaisons to them, we're doing this because this is the policymaker under the charter. We're trying to determine how to put this before you folks, the people and your neighbors, to make sure that it's a good project that everybody, projects that everybody can get from. So as far as delaying it and putting somewhere else, we chose here. Hopefully they'll be able to accommodate everybody. It looks like we made the right choice. And so that's the reason why we're here. Again, it's more or less discussion for the board. I'm glad you're here to hear the discussion. Obviously, at some point, we'll certainly take input from all you folks. It's a public meeting. But that's the value of it. We're trying to find out what different people think about the various projects and how we can fashion it, if I'm not mistaken. Is that fair to say for my board members? So in the first, then, I'd like to really start off then and talk about the proposed senior center at the former middle school known as well as the gymnasium. And I know I'm actually going to probably stop here because I want to turn it over to my board members and ask them some of the concerns they have, some of the ideas that maybe have not necessarily been vetted fully, and to see where we go and have that discussion to see what people's thoughts are. So I'm going to turn it over to who would like to start off.
The only thing I'd add to that before we talk about specific projects, and one of the main reasons I want to have this meeting was there's so much information that has happened over the last couple of months, and some has changed, and in talking with everybody individually, people know some things and don't know other things, and know funding mechanisms and don't know funding mechanisms, and all of a sudden these projects that get to a point where they, in my case, it's not really looking like what I thought it was going to be, and it wasn't going down the path that I thought it was. And talking to everybody has their pros and cons, like John said, on each one of the projects, and they're just not, there's just things we need to discuss through. And none of us, we haven't done this in an open meeting, and I thought it would be good to have that together where we can all just bicker and banter about stuff and see if there's a plan that can come together. Because I don't think any of us are feeling 100% strong behind either of the projects right now. And the goal is to get a project before the town that is good for the town, that can actually pass, and is good for the long-term picture of the town as well. So those are some of the reasons why I was hoping that we could get to that in this meeting, and then go into the detail of all of them. And I think we've all been informed probably a lot more in the last couple of weeks in talking about this stuff about, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't think that was going to do this, I didn't think that was going to cost that. So it's also kind of giving to the public and each other everything that we know about the projects at this point in time that maybe isn't, in everybody's handbook of information. So that's the only caveat. I mean, I think we're at.
Only a question, if you can't hear in the back, just let us know, and we'll try to broadcast it a little, project it a little louder. Sometimes I'm a little soft-spoken, so please let us know. Do you want to start, Tony?
Sure, do you want me to talk about the senior center?
Let's start with that, yes.
Okay, and again, these are my views, not necessarily the views of everybody up here. Although I do think we all have a common thread on many points of it. The senior center, I think, is, as Sean and I talked about the other day, this is one of the things we ran for office on. You know, the groundwater and the senior center are the two most important projects, in my opinion, that the town has to deal with. The senior center project came before us, a lot of discussion over location and all this stuff. In a nutshell, I think the project has grown to a scope that is above and beyond what I thought it was going to be, and to the point where I think it's detrimental to the success of the senior center. We've got we've all seen the numbers. The building itself is about $8.5 million, and we've probably doubled it with other things that have been attached to the project, namely knocking down gates, and in turn, the repercussions of that is we have to find a new place for rec to go and refurbish the gym and refurbish that whole area, which is another, the latest numbers were over $5 million for that. So all of these things has literally doubled the cost of the senior center, which was not the intention when we got into this project. Sean and I remember we spoke at the very first meeting about knocking down gates, and it was our impression that it would cost about $1 million to do it, and it ended up being 3 times that. And I think that shocked me. I know I've mentioned that, and I think it probably shocked everybody at the table here. So those are components that I think are being added to this project that are going to cause it not to pass. And the last thing we want to do is spend time and energy on a project and put it before the town and have it fail. And I think we're getting to the point right now where if we want something to happen at the annual town meeting, we need to discuss any changes or anything going on to that project now so that we can get it on track. Otherwise, it would have to be postponed to another time. And I really don't want to do that. You know, I think the seniors have waited long enough, and I think that, the longer you wait, another project's going to come around and be more important and push this one back on the back burner again. So those are kind of my concerns. And what I would like to do at some point in time is discuss eliminating those other parts of the project, not knocking down gates, not refurbishing the gyms, not building out the area underneath the gym, and really work on just getting the senior center as designed, because I do like the design, put somewhere else. And my favor would be, I like the location of that property. I'd like to consider putting it somewhere else on that property. We have a couple of designs of a couple of the locations, and which hopefully will change the site work and stuff that needs to be done at all, and drop the overall price of the project for the town people. So, is that a good start?
Yeah, I guess so. Not knocking down gates, not doing the gym, relocating the proposed center somewhere else on property.
And then, so there are some things to gates that will have to be done. I think handicap accessibility will have to be done. An elevator or something at the gym to get that up to going. But yeah.
I was just going to jump in there. At some point, if you don't do a lot with the existing gates building, you may not have to put an elevator in. If you did a standalone facility in the back, you're not doing a lot of repairs. Not that you wouldn't want to, but if you have to. There's that threshold of 50%, whatever it is. Then you have to, but, and I know some people don't want to.
Any thought?
Yeah, I don't mind going.
Well, here's my thoughts on whatever happens with the gymnasium needs to be handicap accessible, not just for people with disabilities. It has to be accessible for the elderly, people who are injured. And I say that because I actually, after last summer, walking around with cane and crutches, realized just how difficult it is for people who are, whether it's elderly or disabled, trying to ambulate and get around. So right away, gymnasium, if it stays, has to have an elevator, and I'm not proposing to get rid of it, that just says. So that's number one. As far as your thought about relocating, that's a whole other discussion, which we get into. But I think the other problem is leaving it up, then would be that we're going to just leave it there for the future to decide. But there's going to be a cost to carry that. And are you proposing then, if that were the case, to keep the C wing all intact, or that would come down?
Yeah, well, again, this is not, a little bit better than spitballing, but still just trying to throw some ideas out there. I think the C-wing has to go. I think that would be relatively easy demolition. And I think it needs to open up that site so that parking and driving and the building go somewhere. And yes, we wouldn't knock down gates. There would be some sort of cost to heat it and make sure that it didn't freeze. A lot of the building is being used by rec and by a lot of their programming in the A-wing. And who knows what will happen, you know? I mean, the master plan 7-8 years ago was to put the town hall there. I still think that's a great idea. I don't know that it'll ever come to fruition, but maybe in 3, 4, 5, 10 years, that could happen. You know, other departments may be able to use it, maybe some commercial venture, who knows what can happen. But I think what we've done is we've saddled the senior center with this thing, with this anchor, that is causing the cost to go up so much, and it's going to cause the senior center not to pass. So I don't think those two projects should be tied together. Is just my thought. And yes, it'll be passed down the road, and maybe someone else will have to deal with it, or we'll have to deal with it in years afterwards, but not the type of this project.
So I don't disagree with you about the gym portion of it being much higher than we anticipated, and I would like to see that portion of it ratcheted down. I think it's important that everybody remembers that, you know, we have a public building commission that has been going through this since July. So I just want to share a couple of numbers with some of the scenarios that you've thrown out there.
Laura, could you speak up, please?
Yep,
Thank you.
I can scream. So option one, which was to demolish the C wing and put the senior center in the B wing and part of the A wing, and to just renovate the gym for rec, was going to be about $21 million. Option two, keeping the A wing and the gym intact and building a standalone senior center adjacent to the E with A wing, was going to be around $25 million. Option three, to repurpose the entire building, keep the whole gates intact as it is, and refurbish it, leaving a portion of the B wing undeveloped, so they were giving enough space for the senior center programming, but not utilizing the entire building, so trying to save some costs there, and keeping the field intact behind it was $27 million. So I just want to give some perspective as to, I think, why we're here at this $18, $19 million option, which really is the least of the 3 or 4 that the Public Building Commission reviewed. I don't disagree that the gym piece has gotten out of hand, and I would like to see that back down a little bit. But when you look at the numbers and the estimates that we've been provided, the minute you touch that A wing, the costs increase incredibly. And in my mind, that piece of property is such an iconic piece of property for us as a town. And for us to leave that Gates building up as it is today and put a building in another corner of that property is, in my mind, not the best for the town. I think that is such an iconic center for us. This is an opportunity for us to build a beautiful community center area there. It doesn't necessarily, we don't need to just call it a senior center. If we're renovating the gym and we've got social services, veteran services, and a senior center, it could be a wonderful Scituate community center to bring us all together as a town on a piece of property that is so central and beautiful. I understand, and
Can I stop for a second?
Yeah.
This isn't Tony's plan.
no, I don't.
So tell me your idea, you know?
Well, and I think I just told you my idea. My idea is to stick with the plan. I think at some point you've got to put a stake in the ground, but I would like to see the cost for the renovation of the gym piece brought down considerably. Like, I think we need to make sure it's handicap accessible. I think we need to make sure that it has adequate offices and space for rec. I don't think the whole thing needs to be state-of-the-art. I just don't think we need to do that. So I think there is opportunity for us to have a conversation with the OPM and the architects to back down a few $1 million out of that, so we can get it to a more reasonable cost. Is it expensive? Absolutely. Is it going to be cheaper in 5 years or 8 years? No, it's not. So that's what I struggle with. And I, as you or everyone else, I want to make sure that we put together a plan in front of our residents that people can support and get behind and be proud of. I mean, I just feel like so often in the past, when we've gone down to look at a project, we haven't done it all, we always take a shortcut. You know, we're always, it's too expensive, we'll come back and do it later. And then the costs just go up. Look at the situation that we're at right now with the field situation. Many, many boards brought to the attention of the Gate School project that you're taking a field offline, you need to put that back into the project. And it was decided, no, we'll look at that later. Look where we are today. Now we have Title IX issues 3 years later. So again, you know, I think sometimes we take steps where we cut up our nose to spite our face. If I said that saying right, I'm notorious for messing up those sayings. So I would like to see us work on dialing back the gym piece of it, but I still feel very strongly that the Gates building, I know people have ties to it, but it's just cost prohibitive to renovate it. You know, $27 million, we've heard $40 million. I mean, for years, it's never less than 22, 25, 27 range to keep that building and to put services in there, whether it's town hall, whether it's senior center, the number's just much higher. So that's where I am on that.
So just to summarize, you want to knock down everything, you want to keep the plan the way it is and say, only fix this part of it for $2 million instead of $5 million?
Yes.
Karen? Go ahead.
I'm glad we're having this conversation because this is a lot of information was presented to us that we needed to digest. I agree with Maura that I think the plan that we have, that we've invested time, money, and energy in vetting for years is a good plan. I was shocked, as I think all of us were, when the numbers came in for the rec center portion of it. I mean, the rec center portion of it and the gym. That gave me the greatest pause. It did not dissuade me that utilizing that site, I've got no color with this. The goal of this project was to put the senior center in a central location, preserve the historic value of that site, and honor, that location. That's why we chose it. I agree with Maura, putting it in the corner creates a whole other set of issues that we already went through and vetted, and I think is not what we should do. I'm concerned if we go a different route and relocate the building, that mothballing the building now, I mean, the net present value of the cost of that by the time we decide to do something will be substantial and the costs will go up. We already know what the limitations of that building are. And I've said for the last year and a half, I don't think you will be able to convince me that renovating that building is the right cost-effective thing to do for the residents. So tearing it down at some point for the best use is to me the way forward, and I think this is the best use. I think we've come to that conclusion. I can change my mind. The shockers were, as you pointed out, going from 1 to 3 million in demolition. That was not, when we made that decision, that was a wild card that we did not expect. And I think it's an unfortunate reality, but it doesn't dissuade me from thinking that it's really what we need to do. Because, if we mothball it, it's still going to cost us, down the road, if we all had invested $500,000 just letting it sit there and being dangerous. For the rec center piece, tearing it down, or not tearing it down, to renovate it, I would like to ask, and this is something I have to go back to PDC or the architect, is a big component of that number was to create a whole new HVAC system for both different buildings. I'm not an engineer, I don't know if it's possible, but the question I want to know is if we put a connector between the two, is it possible to share the HVAC and bring costs down for both of them? I don't know, that's just something, Chris is making a face that maybe that wouldn't happen. But that's the sort of thing I'd like to know that, and if that's not possible, I agree with Mark. Put in handicap accessibility, do a reasonable renovation, maybe even explore doing a shared space with a request for interest with a business or with a school that might want to share that space and help share the costs. But to throw another $5 million into the project is not fair to the project. It's not what we intended, and it's not a priority for the town right now. Sorry, rec department, the orphans of our town, but it's not what we signed up to accomplish with this project. So I would, to summarize all of that, is I would like to continue with the plan, figure out where we can bring the costs down, and reprioritize to what the goal is, so that we can present it to the town and it can pass.
John, can I add just two quick thoughts, or two quick comments? One, currently, sorry to cut you off, Sean, but everyone's looking at me and talking to me. So first of all, I know that the rec department is using almost all of the A wing. Maura, correct me if I'm wrong, your programming uses,
Just about all of it.
so all of the A wing is being used now
First
in
one.
some capacity. Excuse me?
No, the second floor, I'm wrong. Yeah, yeah.
So they're using a good part of that A wing now. And when you say tuck the building in the corner, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. I don't think it's going to be tucked in the corner.
We have plans.
Yeah,
We have
so
legitimate
at that
sites.
property, it's a half circle, and it is almost set up to have another building on the right-hand side of that circle, and it would be very functional in that capacity with the gym in the Cudworth House over on the left side, the school in the middle, and something over on the right. So I don't think it would be tucked in anywhere and made to look ugly.
No, I mean, we looked at those options, and I've done it.
I'm just saying, just not,
We had looked
yeah.
at those options, and there are viable sites, and they all come at a cost. If you don't put it where the sea wing is, then you lose some kids. But my biggest concern with doing that is if you put it on the site someplace nice that would be appropriate, you're putting it on a facility that is half of it's boarded up. And you're gonna have to deal with it at some point. And I think it's just kicking that ball down the road. I just am not happy with that. I'm not gonna look at you.
Anything else, Ryan? I don't want to interrupt. This is me. Well, first of all, I've served on Public Building Commission for a few years now, as well as the committee for the new Gate School building. So I learned an awful lot sitting there with, in one committee 18, the other committee a little bit less. So when the library project was coming along, I would remind the board every now and then, if we ever plan to do anything with the gates, the library was built in '74, these buildings just after 1900. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg for change orders and so forth. So I'm not surprised that the demolition went from 1 million to 3 million. I think this area of town is the best area for senior center. Not necessarily on the junior high campus, which I went to, and I think some of you know how I feel about that building, and I'll tell you in a minute. But that whole area, that part of town, Central School, it's just better than some of the other locations down on Driftway. So having said that, again, it reminded me when we were going through the exercise, just like when we were talking about where to locate the new Gates building. And it wasn't perfect where it was, where we ended up locating it, the vote was 17-1, but it was probably the best decision we had, or the best choice we had. So obviously we chose that site. But this is a little bit different. I was talking to Tony the other day. It was quite a bit different. You had students that, that had to go to school. This is a little bit different. And I know the seniors have been waiting a long time, and it's an awful facility that, that made the best of for a very long time. And when Tony's absolutely right, that was our top priority 3 years ago. We need to get a facility. But we need to get a facility that's done for the next 100 years. It's going to be perfect. Or, yeah, it's going to have to be remodeled and so forth, but you really don't want to have to change it. We've all heard about the population increasing and how many more people will come to it and so forth. So I wasn't all excited about putting it in the junior, out back or tearing down part of the old building. I, for one, and I'm probably the only one, wanted to leave the building the way it is. Renovated over time, like Tony said, we had the master plan to move town hall and council on aging down inside it. I want that building to stay the way it is, rather than shoehorn it in. And I just agree with Tony a little bit, and agree with Karen, that if we do put it on that location, there will be impacts of somebody along Beach Street, Beach Farm up there. If we do put it, if it's not the building so much, it might be, traffic coming and going. So I think there'd be a little bit of an impact where there isn't now. Talking about this in the last few months, I've heard people agree with me and say, great, leave the building the way it is, I agree with you. Then I've heard people say, tear the whole thing down, start fresh. Well, that might make sense too. I'd hate to see that, but it might make sense. It'd be an easier build. We would have been way better off doing that with a library. Easier to start from scratch. Oh, all right, so talking about the gates piece, I'm sorry, the recreation piece. Below the boys' locker room is below the gym. There was a fallout shelter. It's concrete and rebar. And I'm sure it's loaded with mastic and all kinds of hazardous materials that, again, that's what drove up the price. So, to Mara's point, I do not think, sitting in the Public Building Commission meeting month after month, I do not think you can reduce those costs. You're basically going to hold the gym up while you do demo underneath. I just think it'd be really difficult to try to do anything cheaper. Another thing, okay, and Karen touched on it, about the HVAC system. Well, when you drive by there, the top 6 or 8 feet of the glass blocks. I mean, that's just cold in the winter and hot in the summer. So you really have to spend a lot of money to fix that. And everything from sunlight to the glazing, could be asbestos. So, obviously the sunlight, so you have to shade it of some type. So it'd be a difficult task to try to reduce that portion, I think.
Well, and that was going to be my question to you or somebody from Public Buildings. What portion of the $5 million is structurally needed and what portion is aesthetic? That's what I would want to know.
Just.
I can't tell from the numbers that we have, they just seem too high level for me. Like, I don't think we have that, does anyone, do you have that? I don't have
There
that
is a
detail.
detail, but it's, I don't have the read that goes through all the costs.
Well, that's what I printed out today, and is it there, it doesn't sort of break down, it just says rec center, general construction costs, it doesn't really say what that really entails. And it says 5.7 million. And I'm just talking, it doesn't include any of the site work or anything like that.
Just one more thing, just one more thing. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just don't know what that's what I want to know, is
And
what
I guess
can be done out of that?
I don't know the answer to this. Could rec stay in the facility while this is going on? And at some point, I'd have to say no, especially if it's this time of year.
Oh, no.
So, we've been bouncing around like a yo-yo, all over the place. So, and I love the idea that they asked for enough. That's just what we're going to do. So, go into the C-wing, I don't care. Use it all. Yeah. I'm just saying, occupied, it's there, we have heat, we have cool.
So this is, I guess, the way I see it right now. Whether or not you go to town meeting in April is another discussion I can get into, but assuming we're going to bring the current project to a vote. And mind you, the vote is the public to decide, it's not us. This is a proposed plan pursuant to the annual town meeting in April of last year, where everybody at town meeting said, please proceed, put it at the gate. You know, my feeling is, and I think I hear from the board, that the gymnasium should not be the main focus for the wants of redoing the whole gym. You know, whether it's the glass up above, whether it's air conditioning, whether it's ripping out the lockers and making it functional space. I honestly think we should just do the bare minimum of what we should do, which is elevator, and then it begs the question about heating, because that's going to be a source of ability there. And I also think we also have to take a look at what I mentioned at the meeting when Joel was before us, maintaining or retaining rather the classrooms that Morrow's in currently, and that L that connects to the B wing that goes down to the classrooms, or the A wing, I could say, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah.
I will say though, more saying that they're using the first floor and possibly the second floor, I think that we need to really kind of further consider that, because if they are being functionally used, then why tear down? And it's, I think, important for us to further explore. So let me just wrap it to where I think. I honestly think, I like the building, I'd like to go back to the plan that we had back in 2012 and put town hall there and put senior center in there. But we went through that, and we spent a lot of time, and we heard from the public, and in particular seniors and people who represent them, that was not what they wanted. And I feel like after going through that for the past 5 years, that this is now a proposal, standalone building that we voted on back last April, over a year ago, so before Jim was here, when you were chair, to put it on the site. And we determined that for a reason, because if we didn't put it there, people were going to ask us, what's going to happen to the Gates building? And now we're going back, and at that time we decided, let's deal with the Gates building, which was the gymnasium, and we're going to put the senior center there. And everybody, and I, you know, as I say, we all agreed, we finally voted it up. It does have the best location in town. It is the center of town. And right now, as proposed, it's going to be almost dead center to the entryway, which would look really nice for the presentation coming in. I love the old building. I like the fact that if we could keep it. I specifically asked the architects to make sure, could they do an option to retain the old building? Not the whole wings, but at least the center portion. And I'm not sure which option it was more, but clearly the public building said it's too expensive to keep it and build around it. So that option was determined that it wasn't financially maybe prudent, or it's too expensive, 21 million. So now we're here, we have a proposal, it's been vetted, and I feel we need to proceed to have the town decide one way or the other. If the town decides no, then my feeling on it is then fine, we'll go back and do it again. And I look at this and I'm like, it fits the requirements. I feel bad because we actually said that we wanted to deal with the property as a whole. And if this were the discussion back in April 2000 or September 2017, then I would have said, stay on Driftway, stay at the library, just don't do this. But we didn't. And that's why I think we need to see this through. I think we need to go through it. We've got to reduce the costs. The demolition did go up. I think, here's another problem we've run into. If you really want to think about, not us, but people in general want to keep the old Gates building, after going through what we went through in the library, there are hidden costs. And then you have to ask, what's the function going to be inside? And the other overarching issue, which I know we all know up here, but there are other costs associated with other deferred maintenance for years that the town has to deal with. And I just, as much as I'd like to keep the building up, I will say replicating it, they tried to. I'm not a fan of it. I wish they had done something more unique, but they replicated it. And I'm like, maybe we can tweak it. We tweaked it with the library. The library came out with something completely different, and then it turned out to be retaining the kind of architecture of 1976. So that's my thoughts on it. I think if we have hitched the gymnasium, we still have to deal with the gymnasium. And I think think that's really important. You gotta keep it. And if it's not gonna be connected, then we have to think of a heating source for both the A wing and the gymnasium itself. And that's something that we need to address. But my feeling on it is that keep the plan as presently proposed, and go forward with it. And just try to see what we can do and hitch some of those other costs. Thoughts? After everybody said something here?
Well, I think, after we talk about the other things, is we need to talk about just sort of the funding mechanisms, but I think we need to talk about that in a broader sense, because that's a component of this as well. You know, because some of the costs of that rec will be offset from the cable monies and things like that. So, but I think we should have that conversation when we're talking about all of it.
I have just one, but anyways, the reason why we're here is because all of us doubt whether it's gonna pass. And that's why I prompted this meeting, was because I've spoken with every one of you individually, and we all have concerns about it. It's gonna be a $19 million override that's gonna go before the town, and if we're going to do anything to change it, now is the time to do it. Otherwise, we're going to put a $19 million override before the town for the project as proposed, and I don't have full confidence that it's going to pass. And that's why I'm suggesting that we look at alternatives. And it doesn't have to be my idea. I don't really care what it is. We can put the building anywhere on the property, you know, and yes, we'll lose a field, but we've got a project for other fields, and we've got property in the west end for fields. You know, we can work around that. But if I was confident that it was going to pass and that it was a good use of town money, then we wouldn't be here right now. And I think if that's all we have, then that's all we have. But I think we have to give it a shot to say, if both of us feel it's going to pass, then let's go forward. If we don't, though, then we have to kind of come up with another idea that may pass. And I don't think, as Sean said, I don't think if we think we're going to go back to the architect and say, can you make it cheaper, it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. You know, we've done that. I've done that in every meeting. Like, this is ridiculous. How you're charging us $4 million to change a locker room? You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't know the first thing about construction, but that's what they say. So, and we can push it. You know, if it fails, it's going to be a big setback, right? I think for the senior center to get up and board again and at another location and get the momentum behind it again is going to take years. You know, it'll be set back a while.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment? I don't think it's healthy to go into something and say it's not going to pass. I'm not being naive with all of the things that we have before us as a town with making that comment. We certainly have done other projects in the past where the first time it's come before it has failed. Jenkins comes to mind. Sat there empty for over a year because the voters weren't educated about why we needed an override to staff the building. I think that was pretty basic stuff. So it sat there empty for a year. And, you know, educating and informing the public is an important thing. So that's another thing I think we need to talk about, is that if we get beyond, you know, what we agree to move forward, which I would like to keep what's intact. If you don't think we can back down any of the dollars out of the gym, I'd like to at least give our architects an opportunity to do that and show us, and get that number down. But I also think we need to talk about, all right, is it ready for April, or do we wait and fully educate, fully inform, fully discuss out in the public and put it in the fall? That's the only other thing that I think we should talk about tonight as well, because I want this to be a success, and I know you do too. And I don't think if it fails the first time that you have to come back and change the whole thing. Sometimes it's just a matter of information, education, and really demonstrating to people that it is a need. And that's the thing too, right? We're sitting here, we're talking about a need and a building need, and over 50% of our population is going to be at the senior level. We're all getting there pretty quickly, there's more of us. And I feel like some of us, we're in the middle age and we're always deciding, okay, what do we do for our young and what do we do for our old? And we're kind of here in the middle. And it's our job to make sure that we're providing adequate services for both segments so that our community can continue to thrive and so that we can continue to be that community that we all love. We care about everybody, right? So I do want to talk about that, if we can a little bit.
We'll get to it, but I keep coming back to I mean, according to, I'm not sure if this is Daly's or if this is Joel, the recreation is for trade costs of 4.5 million, almost 4.6.
What cost?
Trade costs, whatever that comes to, but the ultimate construction cost with general contractor burden is 5.7 million, just for the recreation. Well, if you're able to cut that 3 million, 3.5, 4 million, besides an elevator, depending on the heat source, that would bring it down significantly, 5 to 15 million potentially. I just keep coming back to it saying, we have a plan, it's been vetted by different people. I need to say, don't go forward with it. The other thing is, if they're going to keep, and this is why I say a D-wing, then we're dealing with, there's no field back there. There's just no room for it, you gotta have it. But that's a minor point.
Can I just jump in and just, so people don't misunderstand it? Yeah, you could probably cut the cost out under the gymnasium, just don't do it. Right? So, but if we want to do what we want to do, I don't think you can say, do, what we.
Well, you have to
want
put rec somewhere, so you can't knock down the A wing and not give the rec folks offices to work in, right? So, I mean,
But,
the poor rec gets, shuffled around all the town, like every 6 months, they're in the high school, they're not in the high school, they're down on Driftway, they're over here, I mean, they're always,
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And when they're at high school, they have a very small
Yeah.
facility. And we specifically told them to spread out and utilize just gymnasium.
yeah, they were cramped, yeah. And they're a wonderful program, that's important to everybody, so, I don't know, yeah.
So I just want to come back to, our mission is to do what's best, to lead this town and make decisions that is best for our charge. And our charge from town meeting was to build and provide a senior center, and that's the goal. And the rec portion is a big surprise. It has to be addressed. Gates is known that we've agreed to address. That punting, I think it's punting not to find a way to present this in a way, both through education and for getting the costs down and proceed, because we've spent a lot of time already vetting this plan, and it's sound, I believe it's sound. So we talked about all the different components, we know what we have to do. Rec is very important, and we have an obligation to provide those services because they're fabulous. But that wasn't what we were charged to do to begin with. And if it's a question, I hate to do this tomorrow, but if it's a question of maybe we reevaluate and it makes more sense to invest less money in a different location to accommodate them, I don't know. But the mission here is to get this passed, and I think the best path forward to doing that is to stay true to the mission and to the goal and find a way to make it acceptable to the voters and as cost effective as possible. So
The only problem with that is you're stuck with, once the building is demoed, you gotta figure out how you meet the gym.
no, and I agree. You have to.
Because that's,
yeah,
we, by virtue of placing it there, took on that obligation. So, and not just your point, we need to solve that, and we've made that as a part of the problem.
Just,
And so that's why I say,
just to spitball on this one though, not at all advocating for this, but if the goal is to get the senior center done, address the problems with gates, I don't know if it's even feasible. I would rather mothball the gym because we have other athletic factors and get this project done. I have no idea if that's even something that could be contemplated. Jim's shaking his head. That would
I
impact.
mean, Laura can give you the
Yes.
schedule for the
It's well.
Gates Gym, but it's used
all the time.
continuously.
So I agree. If what Sean says, you can provide the access and not deal with the lower level, I would prefer that and get the senior center approved.
So there's a possibility, if you don't tear down the end, that's less demo cost. It can stay on separate than on the present proposed senior center, heritage center, civic center, the building that we're charged to deal with. That is a possibility where the cost could be dropped. Again, we're not touching the A-wing, we're not touching the gym other than heating and accessibility, elevator. That could drop the cost. And it could, you know.
Yeah, but I don't know that it's gonna be that much less, John, because if you keep the A-wing in the gym, and you build a standalone senior center adjacent to the A-wing and the gym still intact. Now, that probably included some renovation, did it?
It has to.
Yeah, that was at 20,
$1.5 million.
that was at 25
For
million.
the demo? Or were you talking?
No, no,
To
no,
retain the A-wing.
to retain the A-wing and the gym, use that as space, that's, yeah.
Just
They said, he said it was gonna be more expensive.
Yeah,
And I
Just to
mean,
keep it
yeah.
yeah,
without doing it?
and nobody liked the design. I mean, nobody liked the fact that they weren't connected. I think all of us were shocked that there wasn't a connection between the gym and the senior center. You know, even at the rec meeting that I was at, I mean, they were like, well, how are the seniors gonna get here? We're gonna go out the front door and walk around. And I know you brought that up in a meeting too, so,
But let me hear, you're saying that not even touching the A-wing, going out towards the tennis courts is gonna cost us more than not touching it, which is gonna be one point what?
Well, you had asked about the connector, where the recreation is now, and retaining that, I don't have it with me.
Oh, that's-
So I'm saying you keep the gym, you keep the connector, you keep the A-wing going back. All you're gonna do is sever the original
Yeah.
1934 portion, which contains the 1916. In other words, that gets demoed, it still would be some space for separation or breezeway to the proposed, the new one. And that would, I would assume the demo cost would be dropped to some degree, because you're gonna probably peel away some of the stuff, and it's less abatement. And the only thing that's gonna be costly is we're gonna have to get a heating system in there and an elevator to connect the recreational component, that's it, so we have access.
Yeah, and I'm sure this number includes renovating those structures.
Yeah, we don't need
You
to,
know,
because, I mean, the classrooms look nice right now. I mean, in the future, if they become something we have to do, we could, but they look nice. And that's one of the thoughts I have in order to, to lower the cost to see if it works. I just,
One of the issues with that is the A-wing is parking.
that's where I get to the field. The field is going to be
So,
satisfied.
if I could just, real quick, once the decision was made to put the senior center on the Gates property, the decision was made not to put it in the Gates because you weren't building a senior center. You were giving the seniors a space that was better than what they had, but it wasn't designed as a senior center. You get rid of the space, and that's what you get. And the decision was made, the seniors, I think, objected to, they wanted something that was designed as a senior center. So putting them in the B-wing or the A-wing wasn't going to work. Massing the building then on the site as a separate standalone building, it would either have to be all the way in the back, which would negate the loss of the field, it would be hidden behind the gates, or in the area of the C-wing, which the neighbors are going to have a particular problem with, because then it's going to mass over where they are with all the parking. So then you're left with the issue, even if you build it, we've now spent $10 million plus after we build it, site work, and we're left with the gates. Now, if we finish the senior center in 2 to 3 years, if it passes, we're going to build it, and it's going to be a separate building. By the time we get that all done, we will be talking about the next project down the line, which are the schools. Which the whole genesis of this idea way back when was the town is never going to have the money to come back and renovate the gates. I just don't see the town spending $25 to $30 million to move the town hall into the Gates building. It's just, that was the genesis for the fact that with the senior center at the gates site, you had to deal with the gates, because otherwise it's just gonna sit there, in my opinion. We'll never have the appetite with $10 million for the senior center, plus again, we're doing $8 million for the main sand filter, and now we're talking town share, $40 million for the school projects. We'll never get to the gates, no matter how much we want to. I just don't see another override of that magnitude.
I don't think, Jim, I'm not suggesting that, other than maybe keeping the building dormant, just low heating for the future. My thought is, you keep the A wing, you keep the rec, where the rec is, and keep the gymnasium, and have separation, you could have a connector to the proposed new one. I think that would drive costs down, because you're not taking down all the buildings, you're not abating all the buildings, you're only doing a portion of it. And other than, you're not doing the record, which is 4.5 or all in 5.7, that drops from 19 to 25 million to figure down to, could be 14 million, maybe 15. I'd have to know from them what we're doing. I think that's feasible. I think people would look at the gymnasium, they're gonna say, although some want it torn down, some think it would be a waste. It's used heavily, it's one of the nicest gyms in town. A lot of people talk about Hoosiers and movie, and that's what it's reminiscent of. But it's used, and you got the recreation underneath where people use it. It will not satisfy the people who want to keep the original building and the facade, no doubt about it. But from cost-wise, I think it may work. I'd like to know what those figures are. But obviously that's just me, I don't know what the rest of the board is.
So you're talking about put the proposed senior center right with the B section is not
Right.
connected. So if you
Either connected or not. I mean, my personal feeling was it should have been connected in some way so that you could have, let's say, breezeway in some way, so you don't have to go outside, you go back into the building. But I realized that people had other opinions on it.
No, I think it was a ridiculous cost. I remember that meeting. It was like $1 million. It was just crazy what they, just to connect it.
But there may be a possibility of, if the A wing heading westerly remains a connector, it's not going to cost $1 million. And if they are, then we fire. That's ridiculous. But I think that's a possibility, we can keep that section. And that would be my pitch.
you'd still have to abate the whole campus.
You'd have to evade, probably, you have to find out if you're going to.
When you're over 50% or something, you're gonna do, windows would be hot, you'd have especially some massive.
I know you do it for the accessibility, I don't know about the abatement, if you're not touching it, the old building, yes, that would come down and you have to do it.
Before you leave the tear down, police station.
So, can I try to summarize?
Yeah.
So, I think what I'm hearing is that we want to know how we can reduce the cost, especially in the rec portion. And we want to see if it's at all feasible or cost effective to retain the A in the connector and remove the B and the C and go with the standalone. Is that what we're saying? Those are the two things we do.
So I guess the other question I have is, you have to ask between the council on aging and the public building, the connector portion. Was it not added because of the cost, or was it because they just wanted to be not connected at all?
It was not added because of the cost. It was looked at, it was vetted, and it was presented, and it was a much larger cost, and so therefore not worth it. Now, use of the A1 for a senior center was not ideal, but it was considered and would be accepted if it was acceptable. But
So
it
it's a
wasn't.
possibility that it would be a nice amenity to have some connectors so that you didn't have to go outside to get into the gymnasium or things.
Well, the connector was originally there, it went through so many iterations that frankly,
But that was under the idea that it was going to connect from
standalone senior
to
center
the
to
gymnasium
standalone
going across
gymnasium.
this way. If
No,
it's
it-
there, it might be better.
There was a site difference, there's the elevation difference, I believe there were those considerations, so that it was only go in the A-wing, mothball the big wing. And that was too expensive, that was more expensive and not ideal. Use of the B-wing was more expensive and not ideal, and excess space. It really, it wound its way here.
There's some chairs up here, folks, if you'd like. Stand and walk, feel free, okay? All right. Well, any other comments, what are your thoughts?
Well, my concern is the suggestions that you're making are not going to reduce the price.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I just think it's like an effort of futility, honestly.
I think that you're just, okay, we're only going to knock down this much, but don't hit that part, so it's going to cost more because we're not going to hit that part. And then the connector's going to be the connector, but there's elevation levels. I just don't think that $19 million is going to go down, which is why I suggested putting it somewhere else on the project. And, you know, we talk about mothballing the building, it's being, you know, a lot of the A-wing's being used now, who knows what'll happen in the future? Right? We may not renovate it, we may not put town hall there, but something could happen there. You know, some commercial aspect, some school, maybe it's part of a new elementary school in the future. I don't know.
Wow.
But I don't know that, I don't know that we have to make that decision right now. I just think, and I was all for it, believe me. I was the guy that said knock it down. And now knocking it down is too expensive, and it's gonna hinder the chances of, like Karen said, getting done what we really want to get done, which is get a senior center built, or a community center, whatever we want to call it.
The only fear I have is if you mothball the building, and we know the costs, back when we thought the costs are estimated at $1 million 4 or 5 years ago,
$1 million for what?
to knock down the building we were talking
Oh,
about.
knock it down.
And now we got hard costs of 3, letting it sit there, fallow for whatever years, we know the costs are only going to go up. And that's the other issue that I have, that I'm sitting here going, yes, it would be nice to turn it into something. It would be nice to do it for, you know, as we say, town hall. We just don't have, it's not a high priority, the cost is too high. As far as like senior housing, which would be nice, that's too costly, because somebody's gonna come in there and then have to pay for the whole thing, it's just not gonna happen. So then you'd say, you know, what else could we do? And I think no matter what, it's always going to be a major cost hurdle. And so that's my feeling on mothballing the building. I still come back to, I think it's, we take this as proposed, and I'd still like to know the figures if you keep the other big one, because I go back to rec saying they're using it, it makes sense to see it. Why tear it down? Because now they've expanded the programming, and now we're going to say, no, we're going to contract it. I'd rather see what that number is before we actually say.
Well, I don't think I don't think they're contracting it by putting in the gym, they're just moving them. They went and evaluated the space that they're using today and taking them out of the A and putting them in that one gym, same structure. I mean, it wasn't my understanding that contracting any functionality.
Well, what it says, no,
Yeah,
they're
correct.
using the classroom wing.
No, I understand
Entire
that.
first floor now.
I understand
And
that.
then they're actually using some of the second.
I understand that.
And if you tear down gates or do, well, I guess you do nothing, you leave it there. I see what you're saying.
The point is, the architects took that into consideration in what they designed.
Yeah, I don't know, and Maura, whoever's from rec back there, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that the space underneath the gym is going to fulfill the needs of all the programs that they have now using more of the building. And Maura, is that right? I mean,
Are you asking me that?
yeah, I'm asking you that.
Well,
Is that space,
well, I worked with the architects, and he asked me my needs, and it seems like I could possibly work with that space, yes, but, you know, the one that he's gonna renovate, I could easily make that work. I can easily make anything work, because that's just the way we have been with rec, we've been creative.
so I was there the other night, and there were programs going on almost all of the A-wing first floor.
All the A-wing first floor, except for one section, I think the other party is using one of the classrooms now.
Would they have space below the gym to do all those programs? There was Tai Chi, there was yoga, there was,
Underneath the gym?
at the same time like they were doing that night. Yeah.
As it currently stands, without renovating the locker room.
No,
After you renovate it.
After, yes. be less, but I think it would be manageable, yes.
Are you No.
Oh, yeah, while I'm doing the renovations, I'd be displaced somewhere.
No, because you would have to do the gym first, because you can't tear down the B wing until the gym gets an elevator and heat. So the A wing, the gym would be first, you would move, then the building would come down.
So you're saying not stay on campus there while, okay.
Little masks you wear.
Kids will went to them, I made us,
Well, as I say, my feeling on it is that I'd like to know the cost before we do anything further on it, to see if it reduces it. If it doesn't, then I think, then we have to make a decision what you want to do. My feeling is we still move forward as planned, but as to the target date range, that's different. That's another discussion we can get into, but before I do that, I was going to just open up for some limited questions, folks. Anybody? This gentleman, identify your name and address, please.
James Hunt, Manlaw Road, and I'm curious about the elephant in the marsh. We have Mr. Habib over here boiling his school cauldron, and Mr. Bardman over here boiling the Gates cauldron. Have the two ever come together to see if Gates might play a role in mitigating the cost of the school program that is out there, not yet well-defined, but is lurking over all of this, and will definitely have an effect on the perception of whether a $19 million program can pass. I would dearly love to hear Mr. Bardman, Mr. Habib talking jointly about what role the Gates campus might play in resolving the school issue.
Are you talking about retaining the building or just the property itself?
Retaining the building. We have fairly accurate estimates on what it might cost to restore as a school. That was done back in 2014.
Yeah, it was like 26 million back then.
That's right, better than 40, better than 60, better than 89.
The only comment I make to that is, the reason we moved out of Gates was because it was not functioning the way educational programs function now.
Absolutely.
So I find it hard to believe that using the building as is now would now be functional for like an elementary school. I don't know that you couldn't knock it down then and put a new elementary school there. That's what I was kind of thinking when I just mentioned it before, but I don't know that renovating it will, because as Sean's mentioned, you start tearing stuff down and it's all asbestos and it's old stuff, and it didn't meet the building, the educational model they want to move towards.
But another big piece of that was, what do you do with the junior high students? Double sessions, you cannot want to do that like they did in the 70s in that building. Couldn't do that in today. So that was, yeah, no, I know that, but the whole thing is, you don't have to Jim's point, you don't have to displace students while this is going on.
No, I think we're saying.
So that was the big thing, that if the new junior high was gonna go to where the old one was, what do we do with the students
Yeah,
in those 2 years?
right. Yeah.
Well, the answer is no, because they have not come before us, Mr. Hunt. They're coming to us on Tuesday, I believe, the discussion with report. That's Tuesday, it's on our agenda, so that has not been, because that report was just filed in early January, if I'm not mistaken. So the answer is no, they have not discussed it.
In rebuttal.
So you right here, hold on, Jim, I need the other people here.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Janet DiMaggio, 44 Hatchet Rock Road. I was at a meeting that you all decided that Gates was going to be the best place for the senior center. The COA, in my understanding, was charged 6 months prior to that meeting to go and investigate other options that we had in the town to be placed. I remember Gordon Price standing up and giving a presentation to the 5 of you regarding where we thought we, white-haired we, would like to be, okay, and where we'd like to have our programs. And as far as Maura, you saying that recreation is all over town, have you figured out where the seniors are now going? We're in 5 different places just to figure out where our yoga mats should go. But anyways, with all that, my point is why did you think back then this was going to be a good idea?
And it was only.
And it was only gonna, and you're now scratching your head saying, gee, I wonder why it's costing so much. When we could have gone to any one of those other places for somewhere between 8 and I'll go 8 to 11 million versus what we're all worried about, a $19 million override, and people are still gonna say we have brown water, we need kids to go to school, we need this, we need that. We all know what's gonna happen, but why didn't you have that wherewithal like we have? And why all of a sudden tonight is it so important? It's like a light bulb went off.
I'm happy to take that. I'll give you my opinion why we're here. So, one of the reasons why I voted to move it to the Gates building was, yes, you take the senior center project in a silo, and you talk about 8 million, 11 million at the Driftway. We still have a building in the middle of town that's empty that needs to be dealt with.
But that's not our problem.
This isn't about, I'm not going to pick constituencies against one another because that's not what I'm about, and that's not any of the reasons why my decision and my vote was to go here. I'm not scratching my head as to why we're here. I'm scratching my head trying to just figure out how we can get it down to make this total project more feasible. So honestly, in my mind, it is more cost effective because you're going to have, you as a taxpayer, not a senior, we're all taxpayers. We all pay the money for a senior center, for fields, for rec, for schools, for the Gates School, for that empty building. We had a committee look at the uses for that building. The estimates to sell it was only between $2 and $3 million because of such the poor condition that it's in. So I do feel that we've done a lot of our due diligence to look at all the options and to look at this collectively for a long-term solution. This is what happens to us, in my opinion, as we've gone through life in Scituate over the past 30 years. We look at projects in isolation, and then we say, okay, here we are, this is one solution that we need to figure out. Let's deal with the other one down here. And that other one down here, just in the long run, costs us more as taxpayers at the end of the day, because you're not addressing the larger issue. So I honestly, with all due respect, I'm not scratching my head. I feel very strong and confident in my particular vote. And I want us to have a senior center. I also want us to be able to address that empty old Gates building, and that those are the reasons why I'm still standing firm to my decision. And the rest of the board can answer why they voted the way they did.
I don't want this to turn into a redo of what happened back in September, because we can spend a lot of time, what if, coulda, shoulda, woulda. We're here, we've also got to get to recreation and other discussion, but I would let the rest of the board, if they want to address that question. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Michelle Rana Kosha. I live at 121 Sedgwick Drive. So I just want to point out that it seems like, just looking at the plans, that you have this very large building that you're trying to sort of somehow wedge a senior center into. And then you have the gym, which is still in use, and you have all these classrooms which seem like they're perfectly fine, that are continuously used. People are in them using them. And I just want to ask why isn't it being considered that this could be, while it was not a good spot for a middle school because of the population growth, et cetera, why it's not considered for an elementary school, because it's actually a school, so that would be, great use for it. It's surrounded by historic buildings, with the 21st century learning really being about hands-on learning and going outside and seeing the history around you. And the buildings themselves are large enough to house a combined elementary school as part of the plan. And I understand that it's expensive to renovate, but the lowest price for the elementary school that the Habib plans proposed was $68 million. So if you're saying that 4 years ago, they proposed $28 million being the renovation cost for this as a school, you know, I'm sure that you could chisel out $40 million to get rid of all the asbestos and deal with all the problems that the school may have and turn it into a 21st century learning center that is surrounded by history, that's in central location in town, that could be a perfect community school. I really would like to see that considered, just because, you know, it's already a school, it's set up as a school, it's got great fields, it's got a garden outside. Those are the greatest aspects of 21st century learning, in my opinion, as a teacher. So I just wonder, you know, would you consider that, given the big gap in the cost of renovation, versus the one that's being considered now as a combination elementary school at $68 million being built anew?
I'll answer. First and foremost, the report that you were talking about has not been presented to the Board of Selectmen. That just came from the school committee. School committee authorized the Habib to say at some point, what do we do with it? And we determined back in whatever year it wasn't good enough for the middle school due to a lot of issues, levels, repairs, and everything else. The building had served its purpose for education. So they opted to build a new one, which is why we did it. I don't know why we would want to go back to an 1916 building, a 1934 building, 1956, or whenever they did the additions, and then say, let's put our elementary kids in there. Personally, if they want to do that, I haven't even gone through the report, but I will by Tuesday. My first question is, you've got 2 schools or 3 schools that were built in the 50s and 60s. Why not renovate them or do an addition? I'm not looking for a brand new school because, you know what, they just got a middle school. And, you know, we've got other issues that we have to deal with. And deferred maintenance is a discussion for another day, but I personally don't want to be putting kids, whatever grades, into that school. It's served its time, that ship has sailed. It would be nice to preserve it for something else. But it all boils down to the dollars. And if everybody wants to raise their taxes so we can preserve that building, not knowing what we're going to use it for potentially, but we're preserving it. As Jim said, we've got water issues, we've got potential issues with sewage in North Scituate and minor costs. We've got schools now talking about things. There are just deferred maintenance issues. I wish we could fix it all at once. The bottom line is it's just too costly. And at some point, you got to let go and say, if you can't afford it, what do you do with it? And so that's why I say, I think at this point, I personally would not be in support of putting kids in whatever grade into that program for the reasons that they were taken out.
Just a second, just to put back on it.
Sure.
Sorry, I know
Yep.
that was waiting.
No,
So
I just want to make sure you get some back.
you asked some really good questions. And part of that is that, you know, the school committee has been doing a thorough job of assessing any solution, and then there's school committee members here who will correct me, I'm sure, any solution that we, you know, that the school committee recommends, you know, how to configure the schools, what the education model should be, all of that has to be done still, is, what, 5 years? We're not, I mean, at least 5 years down the road. And we do have alternative locations for a school, and I understand the math question, it's a very valid question, but to mothball the project because it might have could have maybe worked 5-6 years from now, to me is not addressing the 2 needs we have right before us now, which is to deal with an empty building in the town, the middle of our town, and to provide the senior center. So that's sort of my 2 cents.
1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll move on. So I'll tell you what, let's start with that, and I'll finish with this right here, okay? Gordon, did you have a question or?
Gordon Boyce, 48 Manmount Road. And I'm very appreciative of the time, effort, and money that's been committed to the town to get us to this point. I'm kind of in Tony's camp. Just listening to what the concerns are that you have, I don't think we can bring this to a meeting in April and be successful. I think there are too many unanswered questions.
That's going to be our next discussion.
And because the development of the plan has taken so long to get to where it is, we haven't been able to go out and market it or fundraise for it. And I think I would rather see us, you know, think about maybe a September meeting where we would bring it up, and that would give us the entire spring and summer to work on efforts to get people to understand this is, you know, it bothers me when people say it's a want, it's not a need. It is a need. Every town, within, an hour's drive of Scituate has built a new center to service the needs of their senior community. And two, our, borders are adding on to their senior centers because they have found them to be not adequate enough. So there's no doubt that we need it, but I think that there's a lot of education yet to be done, and a number of concerns. It's $19 million number concerns me a lot. For years we spoke about 8, 9, maybe 10, maybe 11. Now we're talking almost twice that, or more than twice that. So I think, we need to pin down those numbers more definitively and see where we can make some modifications to that. We have to look at it at a different site on the base property. Maybe we need to do that. And I think the plan as it's presented is an ideal plan. It resolves a lot of the issues. The elephant of days, we should be doing it, and everything else, and the issues that we have with the gym. So it is really very comprehensive. But I'm not sure right now the masses out there understand that the comprehensiveness is the best way to go. So I think we need time.
Thank you.
To piggyback, Chris Karsher, Stockbridge Road, Chairman Capital Planning. To piggyback on what he was saying, Capital Planning met with Council on Aging last night, and just part of what we do at Capital Planning is we review total costs, budget, tax impact, and all of that. So when she came to us last night, we had none of this. Rules and procedures and whatnot, the way we do the budget process in town, there are deadlines for all of these processes to happen. We're at it. So to go back to do these details and try to push this to the April town meeting, I think is really, it shouldn't happen. And that's, I know you're going to get back to, but that's my 2 cents on that, is we need to slow down and fully vet all of these options and run through the process. Correct?
Thank you. This gentleman, please.
Mike Carstella on Branch Street. One of the things we talked about was, education, getting people to understand that the Binghamton building as it stands right now, it's we keep going back to talking about we can renovate the building for this or for that. I think a lot of people in town don't realize that in one of the wings, I think it's the B wing, I get confused about which wing. It's currently raining inside the building. The roof is, when it rains, you can see abandoned desks, and you can see the rain coming down through the building. It's an abandoned building in the middle of our town. It's not something that can easily be renovated. I think people do, for regular citizens, shocked at the cost of everything, but renovation is really expensive, and the building, from what I see, I live pretty close to it, I just don't think it can be repaired and renovated.
Okay. Facility, please.
Patricia Murphy, 50 Country Way. I just moved back a few days ago from upstate New York, but been in Scituate my whole life. Saddest day of my life was June 25th when I retired from the Scituate Public Schools as a paraprofessional. Worked with those children for over 17 years and loved it, but I got hurt on the job. So my plan in my head was, I retired on the 25th of June, moved to upstate New York the very next day, and was there 7 months, didn't like it, and I've just come back. 50 Driftway, Country Way is my address, and I can attest, I worked at Jenkins School. I was one of the Virgin employees there. There were leaks up on the second floor before, the first day we got in there, old leaks. That building was never built right. I can attest because I was there for like 15 years. That's only the beginning, and that one it was brand new. What is wrong, and what I've been following is, why aren't these buildings being maintained? I'm hearing about Haverly, Cushing School, and then building another school yet. Why can't we work with what we have anymore? We always want something bigger and better, but why can't we take care of what we have? I'm glad to be back, but I hope Scituate improves itself, because I loved this town, and I'm here again.
We're glad you're back. going on? What can I do to help? And try to answer that. I will say that is a good question, and it could take a long discussion. Doesn't mean I have answers to that, but to be honest with you, I'd like to stay on track here. But I will say, the buildings that are being dealt with now that we're building, they are being maintained and will continue to be maintained. Our problem is the backlog of the lack thereof, and again, I'm not pressing any blame, but that's the problem. You need to deal with that. All right, so I'd like to move on to the next question, which is kind of raised by Dr. Price. And to start, what are the people's feelings about thinking about the annual town meeting? Right now, it's on the town meeting. How does everybody feel about continuing that and getting it for the voters? And then, of course, it's going to be an override, and we have to think about an election date, whether or not it's going to be in May or whether it's going to be another day. I open up the board.
I don't think it's ready. I've worked on overrides campaigns 2, 3, 4 times. It takes a lot of work, a lot of organizing, a lot of communicating. I don't even think that's done yet. And to do that in 60 days can't be done. Can't be done properly for it to be successful. So I do agree with Dr. Price that I personally would like to stand behind what we have and formulate an education and information process so folks really understand that we have looked at all these other options and to share all those other costs and just to educate folks. That's what you have to do. I mean, that's what we had to do with the Jenkins override. Why do we need $800,000 to put teachers in another building? Oh, I don't know where you thought they were going to come from, but things like that. So, yes.
Short answer?
Short answer, yes. I think for this to be successful, and I want it to be successful, that we should put it before the town in September or, fall. I would like to try to move fall meeting forward if we could, because I don't want it to go into December, because then we get into that whole issue of folks leaving.
I'm in agreement with Dr. Price, and if he's been eating and sleeping this 24 hours a day, if he says it should be postponed, and I agree. We want it to pass the first time. Yeah, we can come back the second time, but to Tony's point, something else might pop up to the surface, and the seniors get feedback. So,
I would like to hear from the director of council meeting on that.
The price will go up if we wait. And I think we've done a lot of due diligence, and we have jumped through all the hoops, and we have spent the amount of time that we have waiting for the cost estimates to come. I don't know where they are that much of a surprise because of the expansiveness and the increased scope and everything that we just continue to say, okay, we'll do that too, and we'll add that, and we'll consider that. And I think it's a great plan. I think considering the needs of recreation and the community, along with the senior center and the seniors, and the site and all of the opportunities and value added that we get from this project, it is more expensive. The architect has been very sensitive to that, and actually, I did want to say, is really looking at trying to bring it down. There are ways with materials, and I guess they're taking a pass at that, and they'll take another pass at that, and there could be numbers. We're ready to do the education. We have been sort of just hanging on and hoping that now this is the time to do it. We just got those numbers. So we love the idea. We're enthusiastic. This is the time. They did tell me if we wait, it will go up by $1 million based on the percentage of the prevailing wages, and that's what they said to that. I don't know. And maybe that doesn't matter if we bring it down, or maybe there are those other considerations you want to make. I do appreciate all the time in a difficult position, but June 2016, we said, I know 20 million was too much for a town hall, 20 to 30 million. We didn't like the idea, and the senior center was the priority. We got to October 2017 to make a decision on the Gate School, and all of this was vetted, and all of the considerations were given. Community views, everything, I think, has been done. I'd like to get that word out better. So I don't know, that's my feeling. But I know it's still there, and it's still the priority, and it's still happening.
Yeah, I mean, my thought with postponing it is, A, we already mentioned the cost will go up, but also something else could come above it. You know, we have a review report that's going to be presented to us, and priorities change by the, by the month here. So I think, if we're not ready, we don't want to put it there. The only reason I would like putting it off is if we really evaluate other options. I think the site is the right place, but I think we're also smart enough to know when we look at a plan and it's not what we wanted to be, and it kind of grew into something much bigger than any of us expected, that we aren't afraid to tap the brakes and adjust our course. And that's what this meeting's all about, to talk about that. And if we can have further discussions about that in the 3 months that follow town meeting, then I'm fine, but I want to get the right plan before people, and I just don't think this is it.
So, personally, I don't think it's right. Sorry. And I say that because to do an override, to be able to educate people, to have copies, to have information, you have to have enough lead time to be able to bring people together like tonight, explain it, answer everybody's questions, and do it over the course of a few weeks so that everybody can get their answers answered, decide whether they're going to support it or not, and then bring it to a vote. The question I have is, can it be done? Waiting till the fall is usually the instinct to kind of bring it to a special in the fall. But I'm also thinking, why not try to see if we can do a special in June? If we get it in June, that's going to pick up another 2 months. And maybe that's wishful thinking, and I'd say pull it in September. If you do it in September, then I would say at that point, then you can do the vote. Again, you can do the town first, the town meeting, and then at some point you do the vote. But I think this is going to be a train wreck. I think there's so many unanswered questions, legitimate questions that will broadside this initiative. And I think then the criticism will be, well, why didn't we wait longer to make sure that we had everything lined up? That's just my own feeling on it. I wish I could say we could do it in April. But even if we passed the annual town meeting by getting people to vote in favor of it, you're still going to run into the same issue the buzzsaw in May, because that's where the vote comes. And I think you need to make sure you have your answers before you take it to either one. That's my opinion.
Well, I also think if we're asking to evaluate any way in which to bring this down, you can't put it into the town meeting, because we don't have the number.
Right, well, if you go forward with the number it is, and I think we all agree that it's a number that's not going to be palatable.
We can't get ourselves, we haven't been asking them to bring the cost down for months and months now. So it's not like we're going to ask them tomorrow, and they're going to say, oh, shoot, yeah, let's just drop it 4 million. I've been holding this over here, and,
There's a disincentive because they're paid based on the amount. But I think here's the deal with them, that what I'm hearing from the board, we're going to tell them this is the way it is, and if they don't like it, fine, we'll deal with it another way, but they need to understand that we're running this with a proposal for the people, so that when we bring it before the people, we have all the answers. I'm not saying that hasn't happened,
No,
I haven't had a chance to really debate this.
John, I agree. Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say, Steve Shea just walked in from Public Buildings, and I don't know if he's heard much about, I don't know how long he's been there, but if I'm misspeaking, Steve, tell me, but yeah, you could probably get him to shave costs, and I'm just gonna throw this out for examples. Instead of copper cutters, you might get aluminum cutters. Instead of cement hardy board, you might get white cedar shingles. That's where you save money, and it won't last. In my opinion, you might not last as long. You won't get the same product.
The only thing I was going to add is, from what I'm hearing from the four of you, is we'd like the plan the way it is. So if we're going to, they're not going to be able to trim costs off what they presented. So if you're going to say, you gave us these plans, you gave us this number, can you give me a lower number, that's not going to happen. And I don't know that us saying, don't knock down the view, maybe that saves a little bit, I don't know. I like the idea of keeping the A-wing and connecting them, but I don't know that that's going to reduce the cost. So I don't want to...
But if it doesn't, then I think then we can go to the public, to the voters, and say, This is it. This is what we got with the gym, this is what with the...
But none of us like the cost of renovating the gym and knocking down the building. I mean, I understand some of your opinions that, well, we gotta knock down the building sometime, we might as well do it now. It's gonna be a building that I don't think can ever turn into anything else. I understand that. But none of us like the $5 or $6 million that's gonna renovate that gym, but that's the plan we're gonna put before them to sell and to lower the cost on, which they're not going to.
I mean, I suppose you could say, put it somewhere else on site, or you open up the whole question, put it somewhere else, period. Keep the building up, keep the gym heated by it. and
It's
just
a great
sits there
idea.
Indefinitely.
But then you come back and you get another
You're gonna have,
$20,000.
no, what's gonna happen is, when it goes to town meeting, some people are gonna get up specifically and say, what are you doing with gates? Before we start spending other money elsewhere, what are you doing with gates? And
That's
that's
when
gonna
Mark's
be-
gonna stand up and say she's using it.
and-
No, seriously. Nothing's going in that direction.
No.
But seriously,
I think the problem is, people are gonna say, you haven't solved it. I may be wrong on that, John, but I just think,
And then, it's not a $20 million problem later, it's only a $3 million problem later. You can knock it down whenever you want.
well, you can, if you're gonna save and keep more in there, you're gonna have to find the heating for it, you're gonna have to separate it, you have to, do the accessibility, and then you can knock down the portions you're having to do, and that's gonna be millions of dollars in the future. And that's what people legitimately are gonna ask, what are you gonna add to it? What's the plan? And I just think,
And unfortunately, it's unfair to the women with white hair out here and me. You have to get anchored down with this other stuff, and the senior center's not gonna get done. And I think that's our frustration, all of our frustrations. We wouldn't be here tonight if we didn't care and didn't want to find a solution to this, but
there's another question, which is, you take it, you go forward with it. I don't think at the end, but I would say go forward with it. And if it fails, then you come right back, you've got the plan, and you'd say, either put it on site there, or frankly, I'd say build another site. You can go up to the police station, you've got the library location,
But
the
then that's
housing.
another
Why don't you do it now?
No, you're gonna still have the same plan.
We made it look like
It's
a site.
just gonna be another.
It's like a house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. But now you have a separate standalone building, and you unhitch it from the whole gate situation, and then you have a separate vote on one issue.
And I honestly, Jim, this might be a question for you. So when town meeting approved us to go forward, they approved a plan at the Gate Center that required that we presented tearing down. Do we have the authority to change that course without asking town meeting?
I don't think the article did not
Yeah, I don't remember what
specify
the article
tearing
was.
down the old gates. The presentation spoke of tearing down
The
the
article
building.
was for the
Article, I just funded
Iron
the
article.
design of the senior center. It did not specify tear down the old gates.
I just wanted to make sure that was the case. Because I'm a roll call.
Well, that's the reason why I'm saying, I think the proposal is that we asked, that we drove, we're potentially saying we're not going to park. I think it needs to go to the public. It needs to be vetted, it needs to be decided. And if the public decides no, and that's why I say you need to look at the numbers, then if it fails, it fails. Go back and figure something else. But I honestly think if we don't,
if we don't what?
if we don't go forward with the project and we're going to try to do something else, you've opened up Pandora's box. It's going to create a lot more issues. It's going to fraction a lot of people in here looking for different views, for different things, put it at a different site, unhitch it, don't do this, don't do that. When I Rex saying something, you're literally creating an implosion of what the vision and the policy. This board said, and I think this is the way the leadership has to stand up. We may lose at town meeting, or we may lose it at the ballot. That's our job, to put it there. And if it fails, then we come back. We're just creating the policy. That's my opinion.
But if it's a bad policy, John, why would you bring it if, like Tony said, he already knows it's gonna fail? at 19
I don't,
million.
I don't think it is, and this is what
Oh,
I'm saying.
okay, I won't put words in your mouth, but that's really the feeling in this
I
one.
think, this is why I say to you, I want to make sure that the numbers are trimmed to where they are. We created the situation.
Yeah.
We own it, and I want to see it through, and then if it fails, it fails. But that's my position on it, and I say to you, because we could have picked another site. I didn't want that site. I voted against it, and I changed my vote so that we'd have a unanimous board, full support. But my feeling on it is, I want to see this through to see if it happens. Yes, I did, I voted against it.
I said he
Oh, I
did.
thought somebody said no. No. So that's why I say to you, I'm looking at it going, we may not have the support of it, we'll find out, but I've fought some of these other capital projects that we did that weren't going to get the support. And the town did come out with it.
Can I just ask one question? If we backed it out of that budget, the 19 million, we took it off and left it, like Gordon said, for later in the year or whenever, what then are we bringing to the town? Are we bringing another override? Or is that it? Is this the
So
only
this would,
override?
right now, I believe is the only override, and we'll have a discussion on that next. But, and I will say this, I'm not really happy about this report coming out in January. I'm really angry about it, to be honest with you. We just built a middle school. The report talking about a new elementary school. My feeling on it is, this is the time for what has been we've been waiting for a number of years. And so my feeling on it is, they can come up with what they want, but as it stands right now, this is the need.
This is what it is.
This is the need right now.
No, I know it's the need, but this would be the figure that would go for the override.
Well, I want to know the figure, I'm not sure if it's, it could
There's
be
a
more
couple,
less.
no, there's some dollars in there that back out, so there's money, there's the cable TV component in the gym, which we have money in a budget that we get from Comcast every year. So there is other funding there, and that's sort of the next discussion is.
Comcast never gave you a dime.
You're not changing whether you want to delay it or not.
No, I think we need to delay, I'm just saying that I'd like to think I think June would be perfect. You know, Souls, town meeting, come on in, we'll spend an hour and a half or 2 hours talking back and forth, vote it up, and then go from there.
Setting yourself, I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you're going somewhere.
No, I agree with you. You don't have to. Good, I think we're on agreement between you and me. All right. So,
Question?
yes.
Would you consider going back to the traditional public construction model of conceptual design and presentation before proceeding to the schematic and construction phase? You've jumped the gun. You hired an architect to produce schematic and construction documents based on a concept that was pulled out of where the sun don't shine, and you've been blindsided by
Let's
the
make sure
fact,
we keep our discussion a little better than
By
that.
the
You're much
fact-
better than that, Mr. Heinzel, please.
by the fact that that concept was flawed.
That's your opinion. That's not our opinion. We decided that we were going to do that in order to facilitate this and move this along.
$1 million demo fee?
It could have been, well, we can debate that. You and I both respectfully disagree, okay? That's not what our point is here.
So you would not consider going back to the conceptual phase?
We already have it, already planned. There's no sense to go back to a conceptual phase until after this, my position is, until we vote on the present building that we have. So I'm not going to go backwards and start talking about what we could do in another site, or another building, and we've got what we want right now. It needs to be dealt with. All right, so what's the position of the board with delaying it? Postponing it?
Oh, we vote.
I don't know, I just want to, I think that's something that we need to, I take a vote on that tonight, but we'll certainly discuss it because it's going to be coming up. It's not on the next meeting, but they're going to,
No, I said
we have
should.
to,
It's not on our agenda.
it's not for next
There's no
meeting.
going tonight.
No, but I think
Yes.
we'll,
It's not posted.
we'll post it, right? So it'll be at the next meeting.
We could amend the agenda to do it Tuesday if you'd like.
We could, then we'll probably do that.
Sure.
But you know what, I want to make sure I hear from the council on aging before we do that, for people. So, but you know what, we'll put it on the next meeting, not Tuesdays, but the
Two nights.
following. And I'd like to have council on aging members, JD and the board, and then we'll have a joint meeting on that discussion. Do you have a meeting between now and then?
14.
Okay.
Central Florida.
If you could maybe take that as another discussion and discuss it, and then we'll have a joint meeting. And if there's something that you folks feel different about, then let's talk about it. Okay. Any other discussion on the first, want to talk about funding on this at this point, or? Any other questions on this topic? In that case, then let's move on to the next discussion of proposed high school track and athletic field restoration project. Tony, I'm going to probably discuss this. But I know that Bill Lewett's here. I thought I saw Mark. I don't know if Mark's still here. And I know CPC's here, yep, to discuss what we're.
Do you want me to break that again?
What's that? No. Let me just say, I just want people to understand that, you know, we spend a lot of time going through a lot of information, answering questions, trying to deal with the public, trying to deal with the news, and trying to deal with social media. And, you know, Tony is raising some valid questions that need to be discussed. And I appreciate it because I think these are valuable. It's so easy to be a rubber stamp and say, yes, just do it. Yes, you guys are for it, we'll do it, and just put it up there. And this is really, I think, local government working at its best to try to do what's going to be in the best interest. We're not always right. We make mistakes. But I think Tony raising this question both on the proposed senior center as well as the athletic field, you know, I appreciate it, and the board does in the township. I just wanted to say that because I know this is what you want to raise.
Yeah, so again, it's the field, and this is more educational than for and against. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer in any of this stuff. It's really how you follow it. But over the last couple of weeks, I've learned a lot about the turf field, which I think the town needs, and I think it's a good plan. And I've gone to a couple of CPC meeting stuff and just found the structure of how they're going to pay for that, or they're proposing to pay for it. And there's many different ways that you can do it. CPC's here, I was at a meeting the other night with them. The plan to fund and my numbers are going to be rough, I don't know, it's about a $10 million project. The proposal is to fund it with about $5 million of free cash in CPC, which they'll have at the time of the article. And then to borrow about $4 million, I think a little less of $4 million through CPC.
Just under 3.
Under 3?
Just under 3.
So somewhere around 3 to borrow. And then there's about $500,000 that's already allotted, and then another $1 million to $1.5 million that the town would bond in the general fund. So that's the funding proposal for this project. My personal opinion is that that's a little bit more aggressive than I want to be with CPC funds. That we use all the cash in it, and they'll borrow about $4 million. So for the next 10 years, we'll be paying off that debt. I really don't have a problem using the free cash that's accumulated, but I'd like to find another funding mechanism for the debt and not having to borrow for CPC. In my mind, I envision combining the two projects, the field and the senior center, so you didn't have two feuding fashions to pick projects between, minimize the cost of one, and kind of combine them with an override that would partially fund the fields and use some CPC fund cash to fund the fields as well. And then also minimize the debt that the town would have to take on in future years. So the discussion really isn't, I mean, I don't have a plan for it. CPC is still working on their plan. They haven't voted anything yet. They've had discussions on it. It seems like they're, if I'm speaking out of school here, I think they're leaning towards funding it with the debt and the cash portion, and the town taking up the rest of the debt. And that would go before the town meeting vote, and the town would either vote it up or down, and it wouldn't have to go to the ballot. From a field perspective, I think that's great. Why risk a ballot? Why part yourself with, you know, a project that we think is a little expensive. And just everyone has to realize how the mechanism is, and you're gonna feel at some sort of level whether you want to use debt from CPC and whether you want to use all the cash that they have in CPC, and understand the opportunity cost that will be there if a project comes along, because there will not be as much money as there has been historically to do a project. So if that affordable housing $3 million project comes down the pipe, you will be able to do it. And if land comes available, you know, you'll just be limited in what the fund can do for the next decade. But that being said, I like the project. I want the project to happen. If it can't happen through this mechanism, then that mechanism may be the next best thing. But I just think it should be discussed and see how we all feel in terms of using CPC in that manner. And frankly, it really doesn't matter, because we really don't get much of a say on it, as opposed to just giving our opinion, which is what we're here to do. You know, my job here is to voice my opinion on what I think is in the best interest of the town. And I have kids that play on those fields, and I want them to play on those fields, but that's kind of a different perspective. And then it'll go before the town, and like everything the town will decide. So that's a good start.
I too I was surprised, because I just hadn't seen the information. I don't, you know, I'm not the liaison to CPC when you got the information. I was surprised about the funding mechanism, but my concern had more to do with, would we be hamstringing ourselves about having the option of adjusting CPC down the road, what we charge people, because we can vote to reduce that at some point. And I was cautious about bonding something with those funds and taking that option away. And I understand that CPC has been running scenarios to look at, is that feasible? So I was very comfortable, I got much more comfortable knowing that. You said something that I'm not sure is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you said we might not be able to do other affordable housing and stuff, but this is just the pile of funds that is allocated to recreation.
No.
It's all of the general funds.
It's all of your general.
It's the undesignated, sorry, Jerry Myerson.
Yes, sorry, I'm looking out at our CPC panel.
Yeah, that's fine, that's right. It's the undesignated fund.
Gary,
It's
Undesignated fund.
So
it's like that.
Gary, what's your address?
Sorry, 26 Summit.
Okay, so what happens is when the money goes into the CPC, we have allocated buckets of 10% for which is rec, affordable, open space, and historical. And then any other undesignated funds that get put in the budget.
Okay.
And that's
5%.
I thought it was all in buckets, I didn't realize it was.
There's 4 buckets if you count admin.
Yeah.
So those have to be funded every year, and those will continue to be funded.
Strictly
But all of the money that's accumulated over the years is the stuff that goes in other. That's why there's $5 million in other.
But to Karen's point, it is tying the hands in future town meetings to reduce the rate.
No, it can still happen. They ran scenarios where you could, but that would minimize, again, what CPC could do going forward. They ran scenarios at 1.5%. You can still pay the note off.
So you can, I mean,
Yeah.
right, okay.
But you wouldn't, I mean, we've spent, you know, $1 million, $3 million, $1.6 million, $500,000. Every year we spend, you know, close to, if not over $1 million on CPC projects. And that would be, in my opinion, you know, compromised by borrowing.
So I think this is a good solution, like a good means, a good use of CPC. So just for clarifications, I think it's not using all the CPC funds. You know, Nancy did a really good job breaking down everything for the CPC committee to look at. We can only use the funds that we put into CPC. We can't use any that the state uses, okay? I want to make sure everyone understands that. And I also just for the undesignated. So right now, there's a balance of $1 million in historic, 287 in open space, 400 in community housing, which is affordable housing, 4 million in undesignated, which is what they're evaluating and looking at, so with a total of 6.9. And for me, what I looked at was, okay, where have we spent our CPC funds over the past 13 years, right, 2003? 50. I can't answer, maybe I should be having this conversation. No, just kidding. So, I'm just looking at that information, so we have spent $22.6 million about that since 2003. About 7.2 million, 35% has been in open space. 3.1 has been in, I want to say, community housing. And that largely is encumbered right now, right? Because it's encumbered for the Lawson project, which is great. And then another, we have the 4 million in undesignated, and then there's about another 6 million that falls under recreation that's been spent. But when you pull the numbers out, about 3 million of that has been spent on trails and, you know, things for our open space that we bought, right? So, you know, you've been very flexible, so it hasn't been spent on athletic fields. So for me, again, you know, we've been talking about this for 25 years. I remember talking to Rich Lane when he was on the board. Jim Pollock, you know, yeah, we did a study, yeah, we know we need fields, no, we can't afford it, we have no money. For me, this is a mechanism where we don't have to put any additional burden on our taxpayers to accomplish. There is that small piece, that $1.5 million, that maybe, or $1 million, whatever, that we need to figure out because we can't use CPC funds for turf. And I have confidence that we can figure that out. Or like you, you know, if we had to, I would put it with the override for the senior center together, because I don't want to pit people against one another. But for me, that's what CPC is here for. And we've never managed CPC in a manner of, let's save the funds for a future project. It's always what comes before it. So what's in the pipeline? Who's coming before the committee? They're very open. They take projects from any constituency in town, you know, historic, recreation, and they do their due diligence to make sure that it fits within the confines of the rules. So for us to say, you know, and have a concern that, yeah, but we might want to use it for something in the future, I think we've made a lot of great investments in this town. I think we have great open space, you know, 800 plus acres, more than Hingham, and we've really done a good job there. And for me, this is a way for us as a board, again, to accomplish something that has been discussed for the past 20 years. So I'm in favor of what they've worked out, and I think they've spent a lot of time looking through the numbers, punching the numbers, and as Tony said, at the end of the day, you know, it's just whether or not we approve their proposal or not. It goes to town meeting, and the town meeting votes the way they're going to vote. But I think it's a creative use. You know, and Sean, to your point, some of these numbers, Nancy did run that, you know, you potentially could look at reducing it to 1.5% in 2022, and the fund is still full. You know, it's still getting money. We're, you know, I think we lose a little bit of the state match when we were at 1.5, don't we? Yeah. So you had those numbers. So it's still getting funded at 1.5% year over year. So I'm not opposed to it because I think the numbers work, and I think it's a way for us to accomplish a very, very, very much needed project. So I'm okay with it.
Forgive me for asking, Mark, but I forget the answer. This project, what percentage restores fields or, you know, and then builds new? I'm not talking about turf so much, I'm talking about...
Tony, Sean, there's no new fields.
All right.
You're redoing the
Let's make it more-
track and field, and then you're taking the existing fields and you're switching them from the grass to the turf. But there's not, we're not building an additional,
Well, that's what I meant by new, going from natural.
right, to go from natural to turf.
I mean, to your point, 20 years ago, they were looking for new fields. And, you know, we have accomplished that with right over here. But that's what Rich Lake and Pollard, Susan Pippin, are looking for potential new fields.
So we started about 4 years ago, we started looking at how are we going to solve the field issue in town that we've had for 25 years. You're right, Maura. On my computer, I have gone back to 25 years that we've been looking at this. It's in the open space plan. We've talked about it. It's been vented through for a long time. A whole different scene up there, except for maybe you, Sean, that I've looked at. Also with Jen Vitelli, we've talked about fields. This is the start of us being able to resting the other fields in town. So if we accomplish this, we have 3 turf playing fields that will add 600 hours each field for usage. And then at the same time, we can rest fields, overseed, and irrigate and whatever, so we can rest them, let them grow. Because if you go on a field that's grass, even if you overseed it and you irrigate it and you just do the best thing you can, one rainstorm, someone goes out there with cleats, ruins it. So we're trying not to, we do have a field issue in town and we struggle all the time. I spent the morning with Bill trying to figure out where people are going for the spring season. We're already in spring in my head. And it's very difficult to piece that in and keep the youth happy. What I like is this is going to be community fields again, like the turf and track are now. There's also a walking trail that goes around. It will be a community effort up there. It's really well needed, and I think it's going to help the other fields in town that are grass. It's the beginning of repairing our fields, and it's always the big ticket that comes first. You have to spend the most money first, and then the maintenance of the other fields are not as much, and it's more affordable for DPW and more. Their bandwidth is kind of small, and they can take care of the other fields in town much better. So this is really something that it will help the town economically too in the long run.
So Sean, also to answer your question, in the fall, the grass field between the baseball fields is a football field. That's all it's used for. But if this project gets done, you're going to have the ability to play football, soccer, field hockey on those fields. So that's going to give you 3 fields. So right now, it's used for 1. In the spring, you can only use it for baseball. You don't have a lacrosse field. You don't have any other fields that are there. So that gets broken up where you can use it for lacrosse. You can still use it for soccer. You can use it for baseball. You can use it for softball. So it's going to open it up to a lot more use.
The other thing, if I can add, with the lights, you'll be able to use it way later as well. And so Mark can correct me, but I think it's equivalent of 1 field equals 3, is that right?
Yeah.
So you might be not creating, but you're maximizing way better.
Making better use.
Yeah.
And Maura, you just touched on it. Will it hinder or will it help maintenance, like the woman said earlier about maintenance in the schools? Will it make public grounds job easier?
Yes,
Or
absolutely. I mean, and I talked to Mike Green about this project, these public grounds. He loves this. He says this will solve us so we can go out and really work on the other fields in town, such as Flaring Field or Central Field, the rec field in the back of the old gates now. They're all beautiful fields, but they get overused quite a bit. And the only time that you can overseed and irrigate is in the fall and the spring, and that's the time that the kids are on it. So we will be taking fields offline once we have, if and when this goes through, so that we can really manage the fields in this town and make it more of a smart way of doing things. I hope I answered your question.
I kind of lost my train of thought, other than... The one thing I'm concerned about is the J field, that we need to have a plan for it. And
I can address that also.
Given our earlier
Is that
discussion.
baseball?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've already
been working on that too.
Well, what's that?
So this already, go ahead, Jim.
So, I think it was 2017, I was given $130,000 to do the south field. The north field's already been done for the softball. Girls, we put dugouts in because they don't have, there's another issue with that, they don't have a field at the high school. So we, recreation thought it would be a nice idea if we put up cages so they wouldn't get hit with balls and bats while they were playing softball. Well, we also gave, CPC was very kind to give us $130,000 to do the south field, which is closer to the bell tower. And we try to be responsible and sit on that to see what's going to happen with this, because after our field study, they said that we really do need what we needed. We're short 16 fields, Mark, is that what the study said? So we've been kind of sitting on that, and I've talked to Gary, don't be send it, we'd like to plan a, I don't want to call it a JV field, it's like a Babe Ruth field, but 13-year-olds to be able to graduate to that field, they need a big size
See,
field
the
to go
problem,
to.
or the problem you have is, you've got a baseball field, you don't have a JV field, because if you're doing a 13-year-old, we have no other field in town to play JV on. You'd have to stack, and I go to Bill, when the two teams come, I don't know how you'd stack them, but, which is why I think we need to figure out a JV component.
Which I have the money set aside right now for a design on it. If this does pass, I will immediately put a design in place.
I think you have to rescind it, because it was specifically for...
Yeah, you would have to rescind it, we've had conversations about that.
That would have to be the
It's,
issue.
you're right, it's specific for a softball field up there, so it has to be rescinded immediately.
The reason why I say that is because if you're going to put it there, that would have to be done immediately to deal with it.
Yeah, we recognize that.
But there are obviously still other issues in town with fields. You know, for girls softball, that would be adequate for now, but we still have Little League fields that need to be addressed, which I think we'd have to address, whether after we strike that. Purple Dinosaur, formerly known as the old Halloween School, that field might have to be brought up to stump, so you have another field down there. All right, well, that was the question I had with the JV field.
It's in our thoughts, and I don't want to take away a field and hurt the Little League by any means, or high school JV. We've had this discussion, and we are forward thinking that, yes.
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, we're discussing the great issue of the fields. I think it's a great plan. The town needs it. As Sean mentioned, it doesn't give us all the fields that the town needs. You know, these are fields that exist now, but it does extend the playing time, as Gary mentioned, and multiple uses. And it's great. The maintenance costs will go down. I really don't have a problem with the project at all. I think it's great. I just don't have the tolerance for using CPC funds the way they're doing it. So that's really my only concern of it.
How much
And
did you pay for it?
I combine it with the senior center and put it in the overrun.
See, my thoughts are that
Is my thought. And, but I would reduce the senior center tremendously.
My thoughts was, you'd asked the question, have we ever tried to pool money for a project? And we did. 12 years ago, 8, 9 years ago, we were trying to buy water. And we told the CPC to save the money so that we could use it for
What?
water, wells.
Oh, water.
And it fell through because the yield in the well was not good enough. You went and I went one year to the CPC and said, hold on to it in case we wanted to renovate gates from a historical perspective. And they said no each year. So we were trying to save money to stockpile for renovating the old gates if we were going to be doing something. So there has been at least an ask in the past to do it. The way I see it is that we spend over $7 million for 600, 700 acres in the west end and all over the town. And I look at the rec component and like it hasn't been a large component. Rec as a whole, yes, with the trails and some of these other things that we've done, the beaches improvements under the rec. But for athletic, it hasn't happened. And this gets me back to, if the money's there, it's been taxed, it's been utilized, it's time to use it because it's a need. And instead of going to the public and say, we're going to increase your taxes further, I think this is where we use it to pay it. My concern is the $1 million, Jim. We've already got $500,000, right, for the field.
Yeah, give or take.
So it's $1 million, right, not 1.5 that we have to come up with.
Give or take, yeah. Depending on the final divide of the CPC versus complex, yeah.
That's the concern I have, and how is it that, you know, you can, and Nancy, that we could...
Nancy's gonna figure out all the complex.
Okay.
So we'll wait on issuing the debt and look at the market, and then we'll talk about some strategies depending upon where we are financially about making payments on that, so it's not to put it on the bond. And then at a point where we have the capacity under the debt to accept that, that's what we're bonding we made and put it on the tax rate.
That's a question that I think people are telling me they're going to ask, that we're going to have an answer.
Well, the board has to agree to that, capital planning has to opine on that as well.
Gary, could you give us your address?
Yeah.
No, building could be...
Well, I used to basically live on Central Field half the time.
So the only question I have to the board is, all of you had you don't have any, we've never borrowed with CPC funds before. We've never borrowed this amount of money before. And the 10-year bond, all of you guys are perfectly fine with doing that. I mean, like John said, I have no problem using the cash that's been accumulated over the years for this project. I think that's a great use of it. My only hang-up on it is the debt portion of it.
Can I add something to that?
No, you know, so that's the only thing, it has nothing to do with the project. And that's the thing that's hanging me up right now. And personally, I like the fact that if we combine the two projects, a slimmed down senior center and a portion of the fields in that it would bring the community together and really get two things taken care of.
When you say the debt, you're talking about debt encumbering it for the future years to come, or you're talking about the $1 million?
Not the $1 million. No. Well, no, I wouldn't borrow them. If we're doing an override, I wouldn't borrow it from the town. I mean, it's going to hamper capital plans in the future, in my opinion. But, what? So that's my thought of something, and that's my only hang-up with it. I have no problem with it, and some people don't have a problem borrowing that, and some people do, and some people are against using the $5 million in cash, and some people aren't, and I'm kind of right in the middle on both. I don't mind using the cash, and I'm a little hesitant to use the debt.
I think the only thing that worries me with the future is, it's not open space. We've got plenty of that. So if somebody comes into a project and I want to buy open space, I'm like, we're done. Gone down that road a lot.
If it's
affordable, probably the affordable component right now is we're waiting on that project to get started. You know, if it does, they do potentially have visions of maybe dealing with the land that we're thinking maybe fields behind it for another addition for affordable housing, and of course, affordable housing from CPC would be helpful, and we wouldn't have the money for it. Historical, unless you're talking about Barker Tavern, I don't see us spending a lot of buying some old building in town, although I shouldn't say that because everybody wants the gates. I just don't see it. We've got many buildings, we need to maintain those buildings, so they're not going to be using a great deal of the reserves. The one that worries me is if we needed to buy it for water, or well, in the future, in the west end, it could be used for that. That's the only one that I worry about. But to hold on to it for something that's not going to be decided until the future, I just think this is the need to try to resolve it. And that's the reason why I'm willing to do that, that's all. But you're absolutely right, you're going to encumber it for the future, and then there could be something coming down that the town would be like, geez, I wish we had not done that. That's a distinct possibility.
Do you want to get anything else that costs will just go up? I should.
Well, yeah, and well, the percentage that we're actually using actually goes down significantly as the debt gets paid off, right? So the first year is 39% of the receipts. Ours, it's not state match, right? So that's,
so is ours.
yeah, 28% is the second year, 27, 26, 25, 30, you know what I mean? So it's being, the fund is being regenerated as you go on. So anyway, that's why I don't have a huge concern, because it's gonna keep being regenerated.
If you don't do any more projects. Every year, there's gonna be
No, you
$1
still-
million worth of projects that are gonna come before.
Right, well, that's the whole point, that there's money there to put towards additional projects that come forward. I mean, it's right, you might not be able to do a multi-million-dollar project, but you certainly are able to address projects. You can't anticipate what's going to come, I don't know.
I think to John's point also that people have paid, they've paid these taxes for this purpose already. So to add, to go and seek additional taxes, they've already paid for, you know, that's what as I think Maura was saying, this is what the money's for, is to.
Well, again, the free cash, the taxes they've already paid, I really don't have a problem using. It's the taxes they're gonna pay for the next 10 years,
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
gonna pay the debt that I have a little less tolerance for.
Yeah, that's
And I'm not,
my concern.
you know, I'm not completely, this is just the red flag that's up in my brain saying, okay, we've never done this before.
Yeah.
We've been conservative with CPC, that's why we have $5 million in there. So this is a 180 change in terms of the way CPC's run for the last, 20 years, how many years it's been. So it's something we should discuss and we should look at and it should
So
be.
I agreed with you that it did raise flags, but my concern had not that it hadn't been done, and I think, you know, it's worth the conversation. My concern was I didn't want to inhibit our ability to look at the whole program if we had encumbered debt for 10 years. That we had to pay, then we
No, but
didn't have any flexibility.
even if you reduce it to 1.5%, a way majority of the money is going to be, you won't be able to use CPC funds for 10 years because you'll
Well-
be using most of it to pay the debt if it's
Well, but
1.5%.
it's, as Mr. Moore's point, on the analysis that CPC did, if you do reduce it to 1.5%, yes, of course, it's more at the beginning, but, you know, it does go down every year. So it does replenish, just not as quickly.
Can I add something about that analysis
Yeah.
that's not in there? The analysis is extremely conservative, beyond what you consider. So the match isn't in there, interest income that we make, which is around, Nancy, was it about 2.5% this year, I think? Yeah. Which, and as you know, if we're borrowing at 3%, or if they just borrowed at 2.85, I think, you're basically receiving interest on a real basis because of inflation, okay? So those numbers aren't in there. You will replenish an undesignated fund way quicker than what's on there. We purposely set that up to be extremely conservative, to show that we can get a waiver from DOR to become a 1.5% community if the town should decide to, okay? It's still replenished. We can, if you look at the numbers, we can buy back our debt. Let's say if rates spike to 3.50, 4%, 5% on the open market, all right, without an issue. You got to understand, CPC, and the reason why that Tony's right, this hasn't been done in Scituate, but a lot of towns have done this. CPC is not a normal town fund, in my opinion, okay? It is more of a special purpose investment vehicle that has a rate of return, okay? And your rate of return is very high if you factor in the ever-decreasing state match, okay? But it's still there. And when you factor that all in, and the fact that we're borrowing at 2.85, all right, I think Nancy used 3.25 or 3.50 to be conservative, and that might be the coupon rate, but remember, if you're borrowing at 2.85, you're going to get the premium then to offset some of the costs. You really are borrowing, you're being paid to borrow money in real terms. CPC has another advantage. It doesn't have to go to an override, okay? It's another huge advantage to this, okay? And that's because it effectively is a special purpose vehicle, all right? And I think, we're talking about a modest amount. If you look at the numbers, it's not going to take 10 years to pay off the bond. As Jim has pointed out many times, we could be very opportunistic. Should rates spike 5%, we'll just buy them back. okay? Should rates go down to 2% again? Maybe we'll issue more debt and take more advantage of it. But I think you're missing an opportunity. I think you're missing an opportunity to fund these fields at negative rates, real rates. And I think you're missing an opportunity to serve, well, for me, it's girls softball, but, you know, for Dan, it's baseball, if it's soccer, you're really missing an opportunity to put a world-class facility out there that we can use, that the kids can use, all right? I think tying it in with another project, this is just my opinion, I think you're hampering this project by doing that, okay? I really do, all right? And you can ask everyone, I mean, my CPC comrade is going to kill me every meeting because I'm the biggest devil's advocate, right? Because I'm trying to force out every little negative that we can, right? But the fact is that I think this is an unbelievable opportunity to really take advantage of market rates, inflation rates. We have a space where we can use, and we can really just invest in sports. And you got to remember, it's just not the kids that get on this field. The seniors use these fields, everyone uses these fields. So, Tony and I talked at length, and I respect what he's saying. He doesn't want to hang up the amounts. But on the other hand, I think we could be missing a golden opportunity. And that's just my opinion. I'm Gary Myerson, 2670.
Let me go with Jim first, and then Karen and Chris will take my opportunity.
Thank you. So just very quickly, all of this borrowing is technically inside the debt limit.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's 3 million, I know it's a lot of money, but it's not.
But it's inside the debt limit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're not relying on town meeting to supplement override money.
No, town meeting, all right, so once, if CPC votes on it, votes in favor,
Right.
it will go to the floor of town meeting
Oh, yeah.
for a vote, but it won't go to a ballot question.
Right. Okay. So it's inside.
Yeah.
Karen?
Karen Connolly, 30 Roundtree Lane, CPC. I understand everyone's issue about what if something comes down the road, what if. This is the what if. This is it. And CPC has been managed conservatively. And that's why we're lucky to be in this situation where we can do this without having to impose any further tax burden on the taxpayer. We can't pay to fix the groundwater. We can't pay for affordable housing. We can pay for affordable housing. We can't pay for a new school. We can't pay for a senior center. But CPC can take this issue off the table and fix it and do something that has been long overdue. So I feel as though I understand the concerns about future projects, but we still will be adding money. And I also will tell you, I think the appetite to reduce it to 1.5, you're going to have a big campaign because there will be a lot of special interest groups that will come out to defeat a reduction to 1.5%. So that's just my,
Yeah, we saw that
political
before.
estimation. But what we've done in those projections to make sure, should that happen, we're protected. So I think this is the best possible use of the money and the way we've saved the money and been responsible with the money.
What happens if the town doesn't fund their part of it? Is there, it's in the town's part of it is the turf.
Everything related to the turf, there might be a couple of small.
Is there a contingency if the town chooses not to fund that?
If the town doesn't fund the turf, then I think the whole project's going to be, it's going to have to go back to drawing board. We can't pay for turf.
I understand, so it comes to capital.
Yes,
And
and only 450 is on the plan right now. Right?
right. And you're 2 months too late for the deadline to get it from capital.
That's why we got that guy over there in the corner.
There's a project on there.
You're not recommending.
No. There's other things that I recommended that you guys keep throwing back at me too, so.
So doesn't REC have a 1.9 request?
Yeah, 1.6.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we just, like Jim said, can we just amend that? All right.
What's your funding source?
That's gonna be up to the
Right,
town.
exactly.
Borrow.
The town would have to borrow it.
Inside the deck,
Inside the deck.
Inside.
Yeah.
no problem.
But other capital,
So that's-
there's only so much cash, other capital plans, we,
Borrow away.
This lady right here.
Enough funds used to renovate or repair schools, like roofs that are leaking, it's only outdoor?
Specific for
Historical.
recreation, historical, affordable, and open space. Believe me, we've looked at that. We could, we would have.
The town,
No, because money was used from the roofs for the school to build a field that was allowed to just lay fallow and wasn't irrigated. And now they're putting some kind of like oil tank in the ground to irrigate the field. So there just seems to be some, you know, sort of, we can use it for one.
you don't have all the facts,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
right. Yes, there's stuff.
That was what I was told by Paul Dahlman.
Well, just regular town tax money can be used for whatever the taxpayers want to use it for. CPC money can only be used for specific projects.
Okay.
Darren Campbell, Acorn Street, I'm also president of Scituate League. I have to ask why, because obviously, as you can guess, our concerns about the JV field and when that will get brought back at some point where in the town. But I can't help but ask why that couldn't be included in the scope of this project. I've seen numbers that, you know, I don't know the dimensions that Central and the South Side, if that's capable of supporting a JV, a full-size baseball field or not, but I've seen estimates that that's going to take about $450K perhaps to renovate that into a baseball field that's up to this quality that we need. And I understand that there's $130K that's earmarked towards that, but the delta that's left, why couldn't that be included in what we're trying to get? That way, the certainty that it's going to happen, timing-wise, you could potentially, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be able to start that first, so that you're not without a field for 12 to 18 months. These things, this is what is concerning to me.
I think
Probably the baseball.
I'll probably end up deferring to the field, but I will say this, it's going to come down to a timing issue. I think one solution I always keep coming back to and keep saying is probably the cheapest option, which might be the best option for the JV field, is to go back to the original high school field in that Gates, the old Gates. And you got the field there, it's flat, it's irrigated, the only thing you need to do is put the infield in. So that would be the easiest and it's the best field.
That still doesn't give us back a field, though. We would still need to put a Little League field potentially someplace else in town.
But the solution on that would be, now you have your JV field. That's assuming it doesn't get used for a parking lot because of these other discussions we have tonight. But assuming that were the case, then you have Central Field opposite the existing girls softball field, which frankly would be a Little League field. Would be perfect for it. And maybe, I'm not sure, I prefer to maybe Mike Connor, he might know, but I was wondering, or Dan Fenley, whether you could do a hybrid of a 13/Little League field, so you could maybe get the benefit of the overlap. I'm not sure whether that's possible or not. That would be ideal. What's that?
The mounds are different distances.
But I'm again, just curious if there's a practical reason why that.
I mean, John, they have these mounds that are movable, but that's a whole different ballgame.
John, I think it's unfeasible to do that, just because of the size of the infield and what you have to do when you build that out. Besides having to maintain a portable mound, which I would, if I was running the league, I would have major concerns. Yeah, I want a high school team for that.
The other possible solution, again, I think it's something that rec and fields need to take a look at, is we have some land off Platte Road, which we've got in the swap, that frankly has the ability to have a field on it and some other recreational components. And maybe that would be a potential solution for the T-ball league. And then maybe you take a cut north and
But you see my point, there's a lot of options here. I mean, it would be nice, from my perspective, to see if we had a specific plan we wanted to target, and if we can get that funding, again, kind of guaranteed with the rest of the project. Since you are having to take away a JV field for baseball, which I totally understand, you need to fix the title line problem, but as part of that, why couldn't it still be in scope to replace that as part of that?
That's a valid concern. Dan?
Dan Conley, Town Highland Crossing. I did look, to Darren's point, I did look at the stats for baseball, for big field. There are about 200 players that currently play on the big field, about 15 teams, 19 if you count, 19 or 20 if you count the summer teams. And I think if we just have one big field for that group, it's going to be a bottleneck. We do need the JV field relocated somewhere. The other point I'd make, just you mentioned some of the space up on Flat Road. There's also property behind the library, and I'm not sure what the intent, if there's a purpose that that's going to be used for, but that is also another location that you could put fields in.
It's funny because that was a potential location for the senior center. Sorry, I'm saying senior center, but the center that we were just talking about. And it's like everything's moving as we go through this, because if it passes and the senior center's not going to be there, boom, we've got that. And I'll be candid, I haven't told my board this, but I have spoken with the head of the, the head of the Scituate Housing Authority about swapping that land for the land in the Driftway. So that land in the Driftway potentially for fields, may or may not, but at least the key here is, do you want that, and that would be a discussion for future board to decide. Or keep the land and they keep the land on the Driftway, because you can maybe build a field there. I thought, during the presentation, there's a lot more wetlands on that property than I thought originally. But the problem is, these are moving pieces that we're running into, but before they can do the high school, they need to figure out the JV field. That's got to happen, I assume. Because I don't know, Bill, how you're going to be able to schedule a baseball game if you don't have a baseball field to play on.
Well, they go back to back. Freshmen are always away. We'd have freshmen away, and then we'd have varsity, and then JV, or vice versa.
With the lights.
Yes. And what about Little League games? Well, that's what, I mean, like we said, I mean, our plan was to try and get this to go through so we could figure out what we're going to do at 9:30. And if this passes, that's the first thing we're going to be working on, is trying to get that to go.
I think Darren has a good point, though.
Yeah.
To get it tied into it, or just go with it, go to CPC for another project and get the rest of the funding.
There will be money left, right, because we're covered for the next one.
I didn't say that.
Other questions, anybody?
The part you're missing is, this doesn't have any plan, this has no activity of anything coming out for those 10 years.
I know, but it also, it still balances in there now.
Jim, do you have any thoughts, any observations? Nancy?
Which part?
Anybody else?
No, I just want to say thank you to both of you. I mean, this was a very productive workshop.
What's nice is it's an opportunity to kind of vet things and discuss it. We don't have a lot of time when we get together on Tuesday nights, and so I appreciate everybody coming out. Feel free to either call us, contact us, email us, excoriate us, whatever you feel.
Or just post something.
All I can say is, aside from that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and then sign, you need to sign any more documents? Just to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by...
Video footage.